Okay, how's everybody doing this evening? First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Kent, and the channel is EOS San Diego. I make a nightly video about the EOS blockchain. I want to talk a little bit tonight about EOS and game theory strategy. And how EOS is applying game theory strategy to the blockchain, or gaming theory strategy. A lot of people think of Dan Larimer as a great coder. I like Dan Larimer more for the fact that he has good logic, good gaming theory logic behind the blockchain, which is why the blockchain, EOS blockchain, I feel is going to be successful, and why it's the blockchain that's so much further ahead of everybody else, because Dan Larimer is able to apply not only his skills in coding, but more so his skill in logic and his skill in gaming theory. And what gaming theory is the ability to deal with both conflict and cooperation. There's a book by Thomas Schelling that's called Strategy and Conflict, I believe. Strategy and Conflict is the name of the book, and I'd highly recommend anybody to read it, because you can break down conflict into four things. You can break it down in commitment, promises, threats, or what's the final one? Commitment, promises, threats, or credibility. Those four things: commitments, credibility, promises, and threats, I said it right that time, are the four things that are involved with the conflict, with the strategy of conflict. And in that book, he breaks down the strategy of conflict, written a long time ago, I think, in the 1960s. But Dan Larimer is able to apply game strategy to the blockchain. He was able to look at the blockchain and realize what the issue with the blockchain was by a strategy, a logic, some ideas behind it, being able to lay something out and see how it was going to play out as far as people using it. Where he realized real quickly, and I think even back in the days of Satoshi, that you're going to have to speed it up, that you're not going to be able to do this dedicated proof of work, or dedicated proof of work over dedicated proof of stake. You had to have a strategy, you had to have a game theory for how to speed up the blockchain so people would use it. And not only so now people would use it, but now people would also feel that it wasn't centralized by saying we're going to have block producers, and those block producers are going to be able to be voted on by community, which is a game theory strategy. So he was applying logic to the problem of how do you create something that speeds up, but at the same time have it be a trusted blockchain where people feel like it's not centralized and it's not something that is owned or controlled by a few people, which I believe EOS is not. Now, EOS is attacked a lot for being centralized by people like Vitalik, because I think Vitalik realizes that his idea, his game theory strategy of Ethereum isn't working, so now he has to attack EOS, which I think lends to not cooperating with EOS and using game theory strategy to enhance his Ethereum or Ethereum platform, but now to be negative and now put his credibility at stake by attacking EOS, which is what he's doing right now. So Vitalik, by attacking EOS, is not using game theory strategy very well. He's not using the commitment and the credibility very well, the ability to conflict and credibility very well. So EOS is game theory strategy, and game theory strategy is involved in everything. Everything we do in life is game theory strategy. Every conflict, because it's never a pure conflict. An example I think that Thomas Schelling uses in his book, in World War II, the nations were at war. They were literally killing each other over a world war. But at the same time, there was a cooperation with all nations in the fact they did not want to use mustard gas, because mustard gas had been used in the First World War, and it was so awful, it was such an inhumane thing to do to another human being, that literally killing could be okay, but the use of mustard gas wasn't okay, because there was cooperation even in conflict. So it wasn't a pure conflict. There's never a pure conflict. There's always some level of cooperation and conflict, and that's what you got to figure out. And that's where you got to find out how to game theory strategize, which I think EOS and Dan Larimer do very well. And that's why I've always loved the EOS platform, because the logic, the strategy, and everything's in place, much more so than any other platform I've seen. And not only is it important with EOS, it's important with creating a DApp. So it's always nice to see coding and coding taking place with a DApp and ideas, but you have to apply game theory strategy to the DApp that's being created. Now, is this a game theory or a strategy or a DApp that's going to be used? Is it going to be widely adapted? Is it going to get universal use? Because the logic and the strategy behind it makes sense. So when, like right now, we're creating a DApp, the challenge DApp. We're applying game theory strategy to our DApp. We're using strategy to figure out how we can get this to be used, to adopt it, to be adapted, and people use it throughout the world. And the game theory behind that, of which what is done on a bigger scale with EOS, with the EOS blockchain. So it's not, everything's not the same, and everything has to have some logic or game theory behind it. If you don't have the logic and game theory behind it, it'll never be used, and it'll never play out, and it'll never work. And I mean, it's not just coding. There's tons of coders out there coding stuff all the time that will never be seen and never be used. That's not the issue. The issue is not the coding. Everybody puts so much emphasis on people that can code and people that are codes, how well they code. But the coding is not the issue. That's the theory, the logic, and the strategy behind it. That's what's important, and that's what you got to look on. And like I say, with EOS, I think the game theory strategy and their logic, the gaming logic, is very, very good, and that's why they're successful. Because Dan Larimer has applied the game theory, he's applied logic to the blockchain, and now the blockchain is very successful. And of course, price was up a little bit today. Let's hope it keeps going. But this is why I'm so excited about EOS, because the strategy is there. What they're doing works. Now, I know it's being attacked, but that's just because people are upset with the fact that they haven't figured out the strategy as well as Dan Larimer has. Dan Larimer figured the strategy out over a number of tries with BitShares and of course with Steemit. So he understands the logic and how it works and what needs to be done in order to make the game theory work. So that's what this is all about. This is about gaming, game theory, logic, and making this all having universal use by people that understand it and use it. Just like with any game that's developed. Any game that developed has to have somebody that uses it. If you don't have anybody to use it, like Fortnite or any of these games that are developed right now, somebody had to create a strategy before they created the game. Just like in these dApps that are being created right now in EOS, somebody has to create a strategy before you create the game. And of course, there's different strategies, different ways of applying strategy. And we've seen it right now with some of the games that are taking place. I mean, those are games that are being played, so they're getting a wide use. But at the same time, there's got to be a strategy behind the game. How long will people play the game? How long will the game be exciting? How long before something else comes up that's more exciting? So all these game theory strategies have to be in place for people to use something and for this to be adopted. So that's what is going on. It's game theory strategy. Please read the book by Thomas Schelling if you want to know a little bit more about it, because he goes into a lot of strategy, conflict, and and compromise and cooperation in that book. It's a very interesting book, very entertaining. I highly recommend it. I think I read it 3 or 4 times, and it really does make a lot of sense out of conflict and cooperation. So anyway, I appreciate you watching. Thank you very much.